The Diocese of Helena, Montana. The story of the faith in this region began with the early arrivals of Iroquois Catholics and Jesuit missionaries, exploded during the gold rushes of the late 19th century, and carries on today under the leadership of its current apostle, Bishop Austin Anthony Vetter.
I always have tried, if I can, to say yes. Tried, if I don't have a good enough reason to say no, then I try to say yes. And it's amazing what God has done.
This is the story of the bishops of America, the shepherds of the past and the shepherds of today, who through their callings and ministry carry the church into the future. It's also the story of their parish, their church, the cathedral. This is The Chair, an exploration of what it means to be an apostle in America.
Montana's picturesque capital, Helena, lays in the shadow of Mount Helena and Mount Ascension, halfway between Yellowstone and Glacier National Parks. It's also the sea city of the Diocese of Helena.
In the early days of Montana history, this region was an untamed and natural wilderness, home to various tribes of Native Americans. What's interesting about the history of Catholicism here is that it comes to the region through the initiative of the Native peoples themselves. The Flathead Native tribe, or Salish people, had heard about black robes, Jesuit priests, from Iroquois natives employed by the Hudson Bay Company working in the region. The Iroquois preached their version of Christianity to the Flathead and taught them a number of Christian prayers and hymns. After sending a number of delegations to St. Louis, requesting St. Louis send black robes to them, finally, in 1840, the Jesuits sent Pierre-Jean de Smet to work among the Flathead.
And the Jesuits had been invited into the area, and in about the mid-1800s, Father Pierre de Smet establishes St. Mary's Mission in the Bitterroot Valley.
The first resident priest to serve in the Montana missions was Father Anthony Ravalli, an Italian Jesuit who was also Montana's first physician and surgeon. A true polymath, he was also a linguist, an amateur architect, and an artist. In addition to teaching reading, writing, and religion, he also helped to teach the native peoples irrigation and animal husbandry. The records that Father Ravalli kept provide invaluable insights into the early development of Montana, as well as the Catholic Church's relationship with the Salish and other native peoples.
In 1863, the Jesuits decide that they need to open a school at St. Ignatius Mission and invite the Sisters of Providence to come and help them. The sisters really begin their work alongside the Jesuits, and not only in terms of education, but they also recognize that there is a great lack of health care in the area, especially for the Native American community. I think one of the things that's really important to understand is the significance of what these women, as many other Catholic women's religious communities did on the frontiers of America. They were willing to sacrifice their lives in order to serve many of these Native American communities, to establish schools and hospitals and offer medical care in places where other people were just not interested in going. It's also important for context to remember that where they were serving were very often places that were threatened by epidemics, very rough mining and lumber camps and unruly towns in the settled areas of Montana. And I think this helps to explain the increase in the number of hospitals that were run by religious orders. Sisters constituted a very ideal group to fulfill the needs of medical care. They were able to mobilize at a moment's notice wherever they needed to go, and they were committed to fulfilling any task that they set out to accomplish.
The gold rushes of the 1860s radically transformed the nature of Catholicism in the state. Thousands of non-natives from the eastern U.S., including many Catholic immigrants, flood into these regions in search of prosperity. The present missionary Jesuits would have to change their focus a bit from simply focusing on the Native Americans to now, how do we care for these immigrants? They would visit mining camps to celebrate Mass and provide general ministry to the newly arrived faithful. However, with the population increasing, in fact swelling through the 1870s and 80s, it became clear that a more formal presence of the Church was needed in the newly created territory of Montana.
The Diocese of Helena was established in 1884, back when Montana was still a territory. Prior to the establishment of the Diocese of Helena, Montana was divided in terms of its ecclesiastical geography. The eastern portion of the state, to the east of the Rockies, fell under the province of St. Louis, and the western portion fell under the province of Oregon. When the diocese was established, it was bringing together two different ecclesiastical regions, each with its own distinct religious culture and heritage.
The growth of the Catholic Church in this area in many ways mirrors the transformation of the economy and the society occurring throughout the region. By 1904, the diocese boasted an impressive 38 diocesan priests after starting with just 4 at the diocese creation. Bishop Brondell oversaw an establishment of 65 churches, 8 hospitals, 9 parish schools, and 10 schools for the native population. This 50,000 strong Catholic population in Montana by the early part of the 20th century was alive and well.
The town of Butte attracted a large number of immigrant labor, especially the Irish, who composed about a quarter of the town's population. The second bishop of Helena was John Patrick Carroll, a native of Dubuque, Iowa, who served as president of St. Joseph's College there prior to his appointment as bishop. He would bring his commitment to Catholic education with him to his new diocese, desiring that every Catholic child have the opportunity for a Catholic education. To advance that work, he invited 2 religious communities of sisters from Dubuque to join him in Helena, the Sisters of Charity of the Blessed Virgin Mary and the Dominicans. He also established Mount St. Charles College, which would later be renamed Carroll College in his honor.
Bishop Carroll was known as a builder and an educator, and it was said that when he came to Montana, he said, "I came to Montana with 3 leading ideas: the idea of parochial schools, the idea of a cathedral, and the idea of a college." And under his guidance, I think we could all agree that those ideals became reality. He contributed to solidifying Catholicism in the Diocese of Helena and in the state of Montana.
The Cathedral of St. Helena, the diocese's current cathedral, was dedicated in 1914, but construction wasn't complete until 1924, when the structure was formally consecrated. It's modeled after the votive Church of the Sacred Heart in Vienna. This cathedral in Helena is one of the most beautiful in the United States.
Favorite part of this cathedral is when it's jam-packed full of people, and to hear that with the organ and seeing what it's for. I mean, there's a lot of people that come and see it, and it's a beautiful cathedral, and I'm glad they do. And art, beauty has a huge impact. You know, it's one of the transcendentals. It's a way to meet God. So you never want to take away from that beauty.
The philosophy of Gothic architecture is very much of height and of light, and we really have that in this cathedral. So really skyward-reaching architecture and beautiful stained glass. So the entire clear story is almost top to bottom, full stained glass panels that tell the history of the church from biblical stories, as well as the church in America. The exterior of this Gothic building is really striking.
The building features twin 230-foot spires, which can be seen virtually from any point in the city. 12-foot high gold leaf crosses adorn the peaks of these heaven-reaching towers. The limestone exterior boasts no less than 29 statues of saints and other figures.
I love these stained glass windows because they're such a testament to what faith is. Life without faith is like clear glass. Clear glass. Can it still do something? Can you still have a good? Yes. But what does faith add? Stained glass. And what a difference. So when we say, what's he gonna take away? Essential, nothing essential is taken away. The glass is there. But watch what the light looks like when it comes through the faith, right? And so we're to be that stained glass window. We're too dull. We're becoming more and more dull, I think. We need more light, more stained glass in our lives, and not all just becoming homogenized into one, right? That we see our differences as a real gift and that we use it for that. If you're just gonna have all blue in the window, that's not gonna work. Right? So it needs everything.
The importance of this building is in part because it serves as the gathering place for the sacrifice of the Mass, but also because it houses the cathedra. And this is the seat of the bishop of the Diocese of Helena.
Well, the cathedral gets its name from one chair, the cathedra, right? Where the bishop sits. Symbolizes teaching authority. You know, there's some weight to it, but I have to also still be myself in it. But a cathedral, it's the mother church. So in a sense, if every other church had to close, the diocese would still have a cathedral, right? That it's the mother church, and it's where I pastor from. I can't go to every parish to be their pastor, and so I send co-workers, right? The parish priests, we're united. We pull in the same direction. So the cathedral, you know, really is that place that for the whole diocese, it's their home. And it really is a symbol of their own faith.
The chair in the Cathedral of St. Helena symbolizes Bishop Vetter's authority as the Apostle of Helena.
I was born and raised in North Dakota. I grew up about 60 miles outside of Bismarck, a little farming community. I'm the youngest of 12. All 12 of us are born in 14 years, so a tight-knit family. I have 47 nieces and nephews and 55 great nieces and nephews, something like that. North Dakota has always been my home. I lived a regular high school life, went to prom, dated, all those things. Then I went to NDSU in Fargo, North Dakota State University. I went there to study mathematics, computer science. And I would pray every night when I would go to bed. I would say, Lord, if you want me to be a priest, show me. And that's it. I wouldn't worry about it. I didn't agonize over it. When I look back now, I can honestly say there was never a time I didn't know that I would be a priest. I always knew it. Now, I didn't know that that's what the priesthood, being called to the priesthood was, but I always had a very natural love of all things priestly and of the church.
After graduation, Austin Vetter attended North Dakota State University and Cardinal Muench Seminary in Fargo, North Dakota. After receiving his Bachelor of Arts degree in philosophy, he studied at the Pontifical North American College and the University of St. Thomas Aquinas in Rome, Italy.
Fascinating. You know, I was ordained a priest on June 29th, 1993. I grew up in a little country church. St. Michael's holds about 100 people. So I asked the bishop at the time, Bishop Kinney, could I have Mass outdoors? and set up a big circus tent. So we took the altar, the ambo, the crucifix, everything, and moved the church outside and had Mass on our farm. There were 1,200 people that came for my first Mass, which was quite amazing. We had beer gardens and 2 bands and chuck wagons and all sorts of stuff. And it was really, really quite an event to see that amount of love for the priesthood and for the church. It was very remarkable. After I was ordained, then I went to the cathedral. So newly ordained, I was at the cathedral in Bismarck for 3 years. So I was 31 years old at the time. That was quite a baptism, but the people there were so good to me.
As a priest of the Diocese of Bismarck, Father Vetter served in a variety of roles until being called to Rome, where he served as the director of the spiritual formation at the Pontifical North American College in Rome, from July 2012 through June 2018.
I went back to Rome to my alma mater, which is a real privilege. Obviously, being in a seminary, you miss parish life. But the aspect that actually was stronger in the seminary that surprised me, that I didn't expect, was the real sense of being a spiritual father, being a real father to these young men. In a way, I suppose, the way my dad must have had a certain pride about his own fatherhood and his own vocation as a farmer when his son wanted to be a farmer, and how that gets handed on. You know, because really, I think seminary is much more of a mentorship than anything else.
On October 8, 2019, he was announced as Pope Francis' choice to serve as bishop for the Diocese of Helena.
I was in Bismarck. I had a day off. It was a Monday. So I was just watching Sports Center. My bishop calls in the middle of the afternoon, like 3:30 in the afternoon. He said, "Did you get any phone calls today?" I said, "Yeah, a couple." He said, did you take them? I said, "No, it was an area code I didn't know. I thought it was just fundraising." They called a couple of times, didn't leave a message. He said, "What was the area code?" I said, 202. He said, "Yeah, I'd call it back." So I called it back, and the phone answered. "Afternoon, Archbishop Pierre." And I'm like, oh boy. I knew his name. He's the nuncio, the papal representative to the United States. And I apologized to him. I said, "I'm sorry I didn't answer the phone this morning. I thought you were a telemarketer and we're gonna wanna ask for money." And he laughed. He said, "No, are you sitting down?" I said, "I am now." And he said, "I'm asking for something much more. We're asking for something much more. The Holy Father has named you the 11th Bishop of Helena." And then he was just quiet, and I was quiet, and he said, "And your answer?" And I said, "In faith, yes."
In the years since becoming bishop, Bishop Vetter has worked hard to live out his apostolic mission to govern, to teach, and to sanctify his people.
You know, I took an art class one year as a new priest. So the artist comes in and says, "Paint an apple." So he leaves, comes back 25 minutes later, and I'm painting. He said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm painting an apple." He said, "Where's the apple?" I said, "I know what an apple looks like." He said, "No, you can't just paint a generic apple. Get an apple." So I get an apple. He said, "Where's the light coming from?" I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Where's the light hitting it? Where's the light source?" And it took me hours to set up this crazy table with an apple on it. And he said to me, "Father Austin, you can't paint a generic apple. They have to be real." It changed my preaching. And I think of it often, that you can't just preach to the people, to the masses. You have to preach to real people who have a real story, right? A real history. So when I'm speaking on a camera, I try my best not just to do some performance, but to talk to real people who are on the other side watching this. And that, thanks be to God, by His grace, I believe, at least from what people are telling me, that it's coming across as genuine. I said, I love being a priest. And in fact, I love being a bishop. We should love what we're called to do. That doesn't mean it's easy. Doesn't mean that we have to know all the right answers, but the privilege of being able to be a part of forming priests, I'm hoping, is going to bear great fruit with me being able to help young people to discern their vocation here in this diocese.